Members of the Board of Trustees, Committee on Audit, please respond present when you hear your name. Kevin Kim, Chair.
Present.
Robert Mojica, our Vice Chair. He's there, but we'll come back to him. Trustee Jill O'Donnell Tormey.
Present.
Great. Trustee Berger.
Present.
Terrific. Professor Ned Benton.
Present.
Professor John Verzani. Oh, didn't see him yet. Okay. Sarah Ortiz, the student rep. I think I just admitted you to the meeting. There we go.
Present. Thank you.
No problem. Alfonso De Rocco. Okay, not yet. And then we'll come back and see when Robert comes on. You have a quorum, and this public meeting of the Committee on Audit is now called to order. On March 7th, 2020, Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 202 declaring a state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 outbreak. On March 13th, 2020, Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 202.1, which included a suspension of law allowing the attendance of meetings telephonically or other similar service. Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, to the extent necessary to permit any public body to meet and take such actions authorized by the law without permitting in public in-person access to meetings and authorizing such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. In accordance with the executive order, this board meeting is being held via video conference with a live stream found at the CUNY Board of Trustees website. We are testing a closed captioning feature, which you can see on the bottom of your screen, and a copy of the calendar, what we also call the agenda, is also available online at the CUNY Board of Trustees website. Additional items may be added during the meeting. As a reminder, please mute your audio so we can ensure that everyone can hear. I'll now take a roll call attendance for members of the Chancellery and other invited guests. Members of the Chancellery and other invited guests, please respond present when you hear your name. Chancellor Matos Rodriguez. Come back. General Counsel and Senior Vice Chancellor for Legal Affairs, Derek Davis.
Present.
Executive Vice Chancellor and Chief Operating Officer, Hector Batista.
Present.
Chancellor Matthew Sapienza.
Present.
Christina Chiappa, Deputy Chief Financial Officer. Present. Sarah Montero, University Executive Controller.
Present.
President Michelle Anderson, the COPS Liaison.
Present.
Great. Claire Eston is a partner at Grant Thornton.
Present.
And Dennis Marone, who's the National Managing Partner of Not-for-Profit and Higher Ed Industry Practices Group at Grant Thornton.
Present.
Okay, great. And you guys are going to be making a presentation. If you just let me know who's doing it, I can be sure that you have permission to share slides. So you just let me know. And it's all yours, Kevin.
Thank you, Gail. Let's now turn to the votes, turn to the items requiring a vote today. Given that all the board members are participating remotely via Zoom and we cannot see everyone at once on the screen, I will announce the resolutions and ask for members to respond only if you would like to abstain or oppose an item. Otherwise, your vote will be recorded as a yes vote. If you are voting no or abstaining, please state your name and vote accordingly. Additionally, if you wish to second an item or have any questions, please state your name first for the record, and let's try to avoid speaking over one another. Now, the items up for vote today. Action item 1A is the approval of the audit minutes and the joint fiscal and audit minutes from the meetings of March 1st, 2021. I move for the approval of action item 1A. Do I have a second?
Berger, second.
Thank you, Henry. Any discussion? Anybody have any questions? Okay, so we'll now vote. Please only respond if you would like to abstain or oppose. Okay, hearing none, seeing none. Action item 1A is approved. The policy calendar. I would now like to address action item 2A, policy calendar. Item 2A is a resolution of the approval of the fiscal year 2020 Uniform Guidance Report, which will be presented by our external audit firm, Grant Thornton LLP. In the fiscal year 2020, Grant Thornton LLP audited both the federal student financial assistance programs and funds received under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES Act for short. The Uniform Guidance Report is required to be filed with the federal government by March 31st annually. However, this year, the deadline was extended to June 30th, 2021 for the university and recipients who receive federal funding associated with the pandemic. I will ask Senior Vice Chancellor Sapienza, Matt Sapienza, to provide more details first before turning the floor over to Claire Eston, partner at Grant Thornton. Matt?
Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. As the chairman said, and when introducing this item, this is an annual exercise that we do each year, the Uniform Guidance Report. As the chairman mentioned, there was a extension provided to all organizations this year as a result of the pandemic. But we're very pleased to be able to present the report to you this afternoon. And I really want to thank our Deputy CFO, Christina Chiappa, and our University Controller, Sarah Montero, and their teams for their good work over the last several months on the report. And also want to thank and recognize the good work and partnership of Claire and her team at Grant Thornton. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, if okay with you, I'd like to turn it over to Claire.
Sure, Claire.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having us. And if I could be the one that shares my screen, that would be great. But before I share my screen, I'll just say at a high level, it's now early May, and we are very close to being ready to issue. Essentially, we were just waiting for this meeting with this committee to be able to approve the audit, and so that we can issue our report. And both, I think, Grant Thornton and CUNY has had a lot of patience with the federal government as they worked through providing the guidance that was necessary for us to be able to determine what we needed to do to audit the CARES Act money that's reflected in the schedule of expenditures of federal awards this year. So that guidance came out, as I had talked before in a previous meeting, that guidance came out in late December. Sarah and her group immediately reached out. We talked through the audit process, and although it took a bit of time, you'll probably see that, or you probably did see that the end result is a good result. There are no findings in the uniform guidance audit, either with respect to the student financial aid program or with respect to the HERF program. Both there's the two pieces, the student portion and the institutional portion. So outstanding results. And particularly when, I don't need to go into details of all the challenges that CUNY has had this year, and everybody has had individually and as an organization. So to be able to finish out the financial audit, or the FY20 uniform guidance audit with not a single finding, I think is a testament to the team. So congratulations on that. So with that said, I will briefly share my screen. I'm getting a message saying host has disabled participants.
It made you co-host.
Okay.
So let's make you a co-host again. You have to accept it. I think it didn't happen. Well, it happened while you were talking.
I apologize. I'm not seeing where I can accept it.
Okay, so actually try to just share.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Let me know if that works.
You're in.
Okay, great. So this is just a summary at a high level. What I think it's helpful when you show the history. Every year for the past 3 years, we've tested the student financial aid cluster. That's obviously the lion's share of the federal money that you get from Department of Ed and any other agencies. This year, in addition to testing student financial aid, we tested the HERF program, both the student portion and the institutional portion. We've already started to talk about FY21 because that audit will be imminent, and we will share with the committee our plans around the FY21 audit at the next, for both the financial statement audit and the uniform guidance audit at the next meeting of this committee. So should be interesting. And then on the next page here, this is just an overview of the procedures that we performed. It's testing of both the internal controls over compliance associated with these directed material compliance requirements for both student financial aid and HERF, and then actually testing compliance with the rules. So our approach was very similar this year on SFA that it has been in the past. On HERF, the areas of focus were around making sure that the university applied the policy that you determined to distribute the funds to the students, that essentially you created an approach of how students would be eligible for the relief money. And then we tested against that policy. And then on the institutional piece, you had options to use it for offsetting lost revenue or for reimbursing costs incurred by the universities to within a category defined by the government of expenditures that were allowable, whether it was enhanced IT for distance education, or perhaps purchasing equipment that was necessary to build out the physical plant for safety protocols that were in place. There were a number of other eligible expenses. So we tested both of those aspects as well. And again, no findings, great result. If I turn to the actual report itself, are you now seeing the actual report on your screen, or are you still seeing the slides?
Still seeing the slides.
I'm going to try to do a new share. See if that works.
There you go.
Okay. So this is in the table of contents, essentially the material that you got, the 83 pages or so of the financial statements. Most of it is the same. It just for uniform guidance has these sections at the end. So here is our opinion on the CFA, which is embedded within the opinion on the financial statements. And it just references the fact that now we've got the CFA, and in our opinion, it's fairly stated. No material misstatements. Here's the actual CFA or of the schedule of expenditures. And I just put a highlight on the two lines that show the CARES Act money. So it was about 136 million this past year. The other elements are our yellow book opinion, which is on internal controls over compliance and internal controls in the financial statements. Again, an unmodified opinion. And then this page at the very end, it's not going, my bookmark is not cooperating. Towards the very end summarizes, it's kind of a helpful page that I often direct audit committees to. It's a snapshot of the results. So at the top, it talks about how you had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the financial statement audit. And then for the federal award audit, you always want to see the no, none reported, and no on the right-hand side. That's what the ideal situation is. And then we do have to report what the major programs were, both this year SFA and the HERF. And the last page just summarizes that there were no findings. So with that, I open up to the committee if you have any questions on the audit process of the results.
Anybody have a question? Comment?
I don't have a question, but I'm sorry, Claire.
No, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out the item that Claire was referencing earlier about the HERF money, the federal stimulus money, that it was 136 million for fiscal 20. Just want to point out that the HERF 1 funds were authorized in March, and we received access to them, I believe it was May 14th. So between May 14th and the end of our fiscal year, we got $136 million out the door, 107 million of which were federal emergency grants to our students. And that was, our priority to get the funds out to the students as quickly as possible. We ended up sending out a total of 118 million, so 11 million came in this current fiscal year, but we're really happy about that. About 161,000 students received certain emergency grants, and they averaged about $736 per grant. So we were really pleased about that. I just wanted to point that out, that was the first tranche, as Claire said, of the federal stimulus funds that came in.
Terrific job. Congrats to the team. Really nice.
If there are no other questions, Dennis did join us, and I did ask him if he could just spend 3 to 5 minutes sharing what he's seeing across the country in terms of trends in the higher education space, both public and private, just to share a little bit of insight for the committee. So if we are okay with an indulgence to Dennis for a few minutes, I'll ask him to share his thoughts.
Okay, well, thank you. And as long as the committee would find that of value, I'm happy to kind of provide my view of the landscape here. Just briefly, as you know, Grant Thornton works with over 200 colleges and universities nationally. And that gives us a unique perspective to really see how the market and the industry as a whole is kind of recovering as a result of what has come to pass. I think suffice it to say that recovery has been incredibly uneven. Those organizations, both public and private, that have had access to greater resources have been able to maneuver through this much better. And when we think about, overall from an industry perspective, there's been about 46 closures of institutions between the 4-year period ended 2016 to 2020. So that doesn't sound like a lot until you put it in context. That's basically one closure of a college and university per month. To give you some broader context, there's about 5,300 colleges and universities in the nation. So that's about 1%. But we do expect that trend will actually increase and accelerate. And those institutions that were able to maneuver best were really those that toggled and were able to deliver their instruction remotely. And what we found is many institutions innovated in ways that they previously didn't think they'd be capable of. And so that helped a great deal. We do anticipate rising costs across all institutions, led principally by personnel costs, information technology, and infrastructure. And as we know, the CUNY included, is capital intensive. And I think institutions are being incredibly introspective and thinking about their capital footprint on a go-forward basis and to what extent they may be able to scale or morph that investment to further control and contain costs on a go-forward basis. When we think about enrollments, there's generally emerging two views that overall enrollments will increase. However, the net revenue per student will likely go down. And there's a countervailing view that some institutions may see a decline in enrollments, particularly from non-traditional students that may opt to pause their education as a result of the commitments and responsibilities and obligations that have emerged as a result of the pandemic at home. And so time will really tell about what happens with enrollments there. The model suggests, as we've all heard, that there's certainly some unfavorable demographics that are emerging, particularly here in the East. We know that probably by 2027, we'll see the lowest point of high school graduates. It's not so much that the rate of graduations are decreasing, it's just that the pool is shrinking. When we've surveyed the landscape, it says to us that healthcare, information technology, medicine, and law will be the predominant areas of majors that individuals will be focused on in the coming years ahead. We know that perhaps with the tone in Washington perhaps changing, that may open the door for additional international students post-pandemic to come back and pursue their education here. And as I speak to my counterparts, particularly in England, they're actually experiencing a bumper crop of students where they quite the reverse of, or the inverse of what we're seeing here. The number of high school graduates is actually increasing dramatically. And so that may present a new opportunity for additional infusion of international students to come to America to pursue their education. We talked a little bit about the federal relief programs, and no doubt they've been helpful. They've certainly have had an impact on our student base. But I think suffice it to say that the federal programs alone are not going to be sufficient to deal with the challenges that higher education is experiencing. And so a continued focus on cost containment and toggling amongst the right modalities to deliver our education and to appeal to students, regardless of the type of way and manner in which they want to receive their education, is going to be critical. A few other comments here before I close. From an institutional management perspective, we're seeing institutions say, listen, the annual budgeting process continues to be of paramount import, but we're doing much more work around supplementing that annual budget with more scenario planning and defining what we believe to be are the right assumptions that are germane to our institution and continuously toggling amongst them so that we can anticipate on a go-forward basis the financial impacts of additional challenges that may be created as a result of the pandemic. The last item that I'll mention before I just conclude here is that overall, we continue to see higher education as a whole increasing debt. And that's somewhat counterintuitive in my view, because everybody kind of did a lot of cost containment exercise. But overall, the industry actually increased their debt capacity or debt load by 15%. Some of that was just to lower the cost of capital, but others made the intentional decision to actually expand their portfolio to focus on priority capital projects. And then in closing, enterprise risk management. So what presentation today around trends would be complete without some comment about the importance of enterprise risk management? It's fair to say that no matter how well defined and developed an ERM process was for any institution, public or private, very few, if any, had what would happen if we had to shutter our operations, if we had a pandemic. And so it's causing individuals and institutions and fiduciaries to say, what else could potentially be missing? And what did we learn from what has come to pass? How can we put those learnings to place to ensure that we've actually learned something from the difficulties of this crisis? So with that, I'll conclude and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, anybody? Dennis, that was really helpful. I think we have to get you in front of the full board because, no, but seriously, the trends that you described are something that we're seeing on a micro level here, but we really need to understand it better to plan the next 5 years and beyond. So if you don't mind, we'd love to send an invitation at some point for.
Happy to, always happy to. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, then. Thank you, Matt, Claire, Dennis. Thank you very much. And again, kudos to the team here to get us through this crazy 2020, and hopefully we can move past this now with more vaccinations. But with that, I'll just move for the approval of policy item 2A. Do I have a second?
Berger, second.
Thank you, Trustee Berger. Any discussion? Okay, we'll now vote. Please only respond if you would like to abstain or oppose. Seeing none, hearing none, policy item 2A is approved. And with no more items on the agenda, I move to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.